Hi, and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman. I'm not joined by Joe Wood today, but I am joined by Max Tapsall from Mimo. Hi, Max. How are you doing?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good. It's really nice to have a chat. I'm excited to talk about Mimo. You guys have been one of our sponsors, partners for the last 6 months or so now, and
Yeah.
you've had so many exciting developments while we've been working together, and it's going to be really nice to reflect on what's happened. You guys are quite a new business, and we know from our own personal experience using Mimo in our business, the Six-Figure Bookkeeper, how
Yeah.
valuable it has been for us in terms of getting paid, for example. So I'm excited to dig into that. But do you want to
Yes.
start by telling us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So hi everyone. So my name's Max. Working at Mimo. I'm currently the sales lead. But essentially, especially when you're a startup, you do a bit of everything. Hence why I'm on today. So Mimo actually stands for money in, money out. We kind of went live in the UK markets beginning of last year, actually at DAS. So it's going to be a full year soon enough. But we only had the Mo in the Mimo, so we only had the money out. And then since starting with Joe and Zoe, we had the money in, and that's where I think where we got chatting as well, especially with the accounting and bookkeeping partners. The money inside is the get paid side is super important. So that's where really where we help out is everything that is accounts receivable and accounts payable. We have some cool new features coming out soon that kind of delve into insights and cash flow because we can have a better understanding of what's going in and out of your own books, but also your clients' books.
Nice. Can you, for anyone who hasn't come across your software, can you
Yeah,
just describe for me what happens on those two? So the money inside, the money outside, like for
yeah,
someone who hasn't thought about using an additional tool outside of maybe their ledger software, what does that actually mean?
yeah, definitely. So I guess especially for your own practice, first of all, the quickest wins is always the money inside. I think for your own, so where that fits in, essentially we live sync to the likes of Zero, QuickBooks, and now Free Agent that we'll cover on a little bit later. Essentially, that will then create a pay now button within your own invoices that you send out to customers, and then it gives them the option to either pay through online banking, so essentially open banking, and then we have multiple other options that are available. It's very cool because it's nice and branded to your own colors and logos, and it kind of gives a seamless experience to the customers. So instead of putting like your account number and sort code, it just looks nicer. It's like a nicer customer experience. Um, and then on top of that, where we have a lot of practices that join is the credit control function on the get paid side, is where it sends out automatic reminders. So that is where we can either do messaging for you, or you can create your own message flows, and that will just ping automatic reminders until you get paid. So that's kind of a super cool feature and super easy to set up. I think you guys set it up in, well, Joe set it up in about 30 minutes and then has let it running in the background and probably hasn't logged it back in since, which is what we like to hear. And then on the money outside, that's more accounts payable. So essentially, again, it's a live sync to the accounting platforms. And then more so to help clients out. But if you have suppliers or larger payrolls, you can then essentially pay that, bulk pay your suppliers or payroll in a click, or send authorization links to clients. So you don't have to have access to clients' bank accounts to be able to push payments. It kind of takes away that risk for you.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. So in a Zoe recap here, because like
Yeah,
you said, Joe set the software up for us. But
yeah,
anyone who knows how we work in our team, Joe is head of finance, so he gets on with creative things. But so you have the option to integrate into the invoices that you're sending to your customers a button
yeah,
that is on brand that they can
yeah,
click and they can make payment there and then.
yeah,
Or you have the option to send reminders to chase payment when you have if that invoice runs late and it's not
yeah,
paid, or you've got some outstanding credit control, maybe from before you were using Mimo, you can chase up those payments as well. But then also we avoid this issue where, and I've had this issue before, where I've had to be authorized on my client's bank account
yeah,
to be able to make all of those glorious payments that we all love
yeah.
to make every month. And you're like, I must work on Friday at this time because I have to make all these payments and get the client to sign it off. You haven't got that issue anymore because you've got one thing you can do, which then through am I right that through open banking those payments can be made or authorized?
So the cool thing is we actually have two options. So we actually have the best of both worlds. We have open banking, so that's great where you don't have to have access, but we also have a wallet-based solution where the client can top up account under their name, and then they can push that payment out straight away.
Right.
So it kind of fits. As we know, open banking is great for some clients. It can be a little bit more quirky with other banks, so that's why we have kind of both options available.
Perfect. That's amazing. Okay, so Mimo, I mean, we have used it as a small business. We know
Yeah.
that bookkeepers in our community are using it as bookkeepers. Is there like a specific business size that it's perfect for, or who would you say that Mimo is really trying to work with if you think of your sort of ideal client?
Yeah, definitely. So Mimo was built for the SME client, the SME, SMB. We don't go enterprise grade. I think when it goes to ERP, people have such like enforced credit control, or they have teams looking after it, et cetera, et cetera. Essentially, where we fit in is when you think about, especially credit control, all of the apps are usually built for the more enterprise grade people.
Mm,
It's essentially it's expensive. It tends to have loads of bells and whistles, and for yourself, everybody hates chasing money, but you also don't realize how much time you're spending probably going through your own books and then sending out emails to your client and being like, oh, well, I need to recap which ones are due when, put them in a download them, put them in an email. They have to then open it. So it just creates like confusion both sides. That's where we saw kind of a cool niche in the get paid and receivable side. Not only it's very easy to add a Stripe button to your Zero or your QuickBooks, but collating what has already been reminded or what is pending, putting it all in a nice kind of supplier portal under your own brand, and just sending one link for them to pay all of the overdue invoices. That's what we're essentially helping out a lot of practices with. The the reason why is, and why I say it was more expensive, get paid is completely free to use. We only charge essentially when you do get paid, so it's 50p per receivable in, no
mhm,
matter the amount of invoices. So maybe in the bookkeeping world, a lot of it is done on a monthly basis, so you may only have like one or two invoices overdue per client. But also when you think about clients that are invoicing the same customer over and over again, that tends to stack up in your supplier statements. So it's how can they kind of group, and when you think about the advisory side of, hey, I don't get involved in the credit control, but you should have a look at this because we can plug it in very quickly to be able to send a statement to your biggest customer and make sure that they can pay you on time every single time. And if they do forget, no worries. There's automatic reminders that will just drop in their inbox. We know how busy, for example, you guys are as business owners, is how many times have you probably looked at an email, opened it, and it's just got lost in the thread, right? It's
mm.
We're here to essentially every few days just nudge it to the top. You can change your messaging. Essentially, you can make it as friendly as you want or as a little bit pushy as you want, and then that will just hit the top of the customer's inbox to just say, hey, I did give you a service. You do have to pay me at one point. So just make sure that this is, and you can, the cool thing is we have clients have let, essentially when you're creating your own flow, you can do it every few days, but you can do it for an unlimited amount of time. So
Oh,
essentially
right.
we've got invoices, even if they're a year overdue, we will continue sending automatic reminders every 5 days, 10 days until that
Nice.
bill is paid.
Nice.
So people who like nagging, that does work.
Yeah, and it does the nagging for you, which I quite
Yeah,
like. Um,
exactly. Nobody likes nagging. Yeah,
well, you know what? I can. I when I was running my practice, I would have these sort of ongoing conversations. You know, the clients. You have a client who is struggling with their cash flow, and and I can remember sitting down, having a chat with the client, and saying, "Right, you've got a VAT bill to pay in like
yeah,
3 weeks.
yeah,
What are we going to do? Because you are in your overdraft, and I don't know how you're going to pay this." And then we would talk about credit control, and this invoice that we've been chasing and chasing and chasing, and then there's this other invoice, and they're still working with the same client. You're like, why are you still
yeah, yeah,
working with them? They haven't
yeah,
paid you. And I can remember like sitting down and just working out on a piece of paper, like if that comes in, and then that comes in, and then we've got to pay that thing, and like. I know this sounds terrible doing it on a piece of paper. Like we can do it in a spreadsheet, or you
yeah,
can use
yeah,
some
yeah,
cash flow forecasting. But sometimes when you're in that situation with a client, you've just got to sit down and work it all out. And actually, And then you've got to email the client and say, do you know, there's this, or you've got to run a report. But actually, if you've got this automatically set up and it just does it, it's one less thing for you to be thinking about, because you know you're sending that out automatically.
Exactly.
What happens about this is just me being devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
What happens if the client just ignores the emails or sets up like a rule or says it's spam? Like, is the email coming from you as a practice, or is the email coming from the client, or who does that email come from? So I suppose that's one thing. I'm like, if you're not going to pay an invoice, unfortunately you're not going to pay an invoice. I'm just wondering, like, does it still really pop up at the top of the inbox?
Yeah, so we try and force, because they're classed as transactional emails,
Right.
and it's incredibly hard to actually ban a transactional email, because it's
Okay.
classed as a customer. So there are kind of legal implications of banning transaction. It's a bit like when a bank sends you an email, right? You have to kind of read it, and it is classed as
Okay.
a message. So the emails, actually, we have an option right now. We are thinking of adding your own kind of brand, but it does come from like a Mimo inbox, because that's where we can get those transactional emails essentially sent from. So where it also has an implication on, it seems like you've referred it to someone different. So
Yeah.
we all know it can seem friendly, but also we actually have our own sequence. So when you set up Mimo, you can either choose for us to send the emails out for you, essentially create the messaging for you, or you can do it yourself. On some of our cadences at the end as well, it has a little bit of a kind of a pushier note, and it says you will be referred to like a third party. Funnily enough, weirdly, we see quite a high level of receivables that tend to land after that nudge
Mm.
specifically. It is just because, A, it might be that we forgot, but sometimes, I mean, we all are. I hate asking for money, and you don't want to be as pushy. You'll be like, they will pay me, they will pay me. But sometimes it just needs a nudge in the right direction with the right messaging.
Yeah.
Even if it's one of those things. I think it's a very British mentality of that all. But that's where we like to fit in, because you don't have to create everything yourself. Like, leave it to, we've done testing on the type of messaging and the open rates, etc., and the subject lines. Just let it run in the background, and we will make sure that it is chased up for you, and then fingers crossed. But again, you never know how a person's going to react, right? I'd love to say we have 100% payment rate on all of the reminders, but you never know.
Well, we use Mimo to chase like some of our outstanding payments,
Yep.
because although we work with bookkeepers, it happens sometimes someone can't pay an invoice for some reason, and it just drops off of the list for them, I suppose. And I know that when Jo started using Mimo, she set it up on a Sunday. She sent some reminders out. I think there is something about the authority that it's come
Yeah.
from a third party in some way, but we did get a payment within about half an hour. I mean, it was a few £100s. And it
Yeah.
was one of those debts that had been hanging around for 6 months or more. She said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that person paid,"
Yeah.
And how you have these conversations in your team and like, "Oh well, they probably won't pay ever."
Yeah.
There was something about that, and I've seen that in practice as well. You can send like a letter before action, or these like Thomas Higgins letters you can buy, and I think that's what it's called. Like,
Yeah.
you get these like lawyer
The
letters,
lawyer based. Yeah.
and they cost, like, I can remember talking to clients about it, saying like, you need this £4,000 in or whatever, let's send them this lawyer letter, which
Yeah.
has a cost associated with it. So if there is something that you can do where there's a workflow or an email sequence that goes out that gets you a result, those little bits of money that you're saving, this all helps.
Exactly. That's a lot of the conversations that we have. It's in your mind, you're kind of, although especially those ones that have been dragging, you kind of already written them off in
Mm.
your head, but it does add up. Like, we've spoken to clients 20, 30 invoices for 50, 60 quid. That's still quite a lot on your bottom line, because it is straight off your bottom line at the end of the day. And even if you get like 25% of that back just from turning on reminders, as you said, it doesn't cost you anything to set up Mimo, to link it. It will pull a report of who is your great payers, who are your bad payers, and then it will also give you line by line per customer how many invoices are due and how much that total is. So maybe you just want to chase your top people that haven't paid you, or the ones that you didn't even realize haven't paid you yet. just send a quick reminder, because you can do that through the app, and just turn it on for everyone.
Nice. So there are lots of, I mean, I'm always surprised every time I go to a conference at how many different tools there are out there on the market. I think if you're watching this, you might be, or you're listening to this, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I can't cope with hearing about another piece of software. Can you tell me like what's different about Mimo? How was this developed? Why did it feel so important? Was there a gap to fill, or is it the more of the same of something else?
Yeah, definitely. And especially at the moment, I think the key thing is we always hear about payment solutions. Payments is the next big thing. Oh, there's another one that's just popped up. Where essentially Mimo, we started out, and that's hence the name, is like the money in, money out. You will probably have 3 or 4 pieces of software now that you can look after everything from receivables to OCR to your accounts payable and payroll. So essentially, you're trying to log in, log out, and then also from a client's perspective, they're probably getting emails left, right, and center to kind of manage everything at the same time. Where we wanted to do is essentially, especially from an SME and SMB, when you look at the underlying, it's not as complicated as it was to plug all of those 3 aspects together. So that's where essentially we're building, and we want to make sure that we're giving the most value possible. Is instead of having something for receivables, something to look at what's coming in and coming out, getting insights into there. That's our middle piece that we're building at the moment. And then all of your accounts payable automation. So that goes from not only just paying like your suppliers or payroll, but that's like the full reconciliation suite on both sides. So as soon as you get money in, your zero is up to date. As soon as you pay something, your zero is up to date. So you're also then spending less time within your zero reconciling, thinking, oh, what's that bill for? Or like, what's that statement line that's got some weird reference coming out and I don't know where I've sent that money to, and then I don't have an invoice linked to that one. That's where we have a lot of conversations with practices at the moment, is not only for clients, especially for bookkeepers, is if you do give them a piece of kit like Mimo, is it does have a larger impact on the time you spend on their books. So again, if you're down like the value-based pricing, you can still bill them for the same amount, but you will be spending less time because they will be paying, and everything will still be matching up with the right invoices, and you'll be spending less time on that client, putting everything up to date. So that's where a lot of the product development is going into at the moment, is making sure that you can have one login for a lot of different things, but also pull out insights in the most important way. Because we have the money in, we have the money out, we're building essentially a feature that will say, hey, well, you've got 3 invoices coming in next week, but you've got 5 bills to pay. You've got enough to cover these 2 bills, for example. Maybe wait until next week to pay those further bills. And that's where essentially you can start getting like quick advisory out to clients, and you don't need a full shebang of cash flow forecasting. You just need a quick 1 to 2 month.
Yeah, nice. That's really helpful. And that's exactly that problem with, a client who's struggling with their cash flow. To be able to have that straight away is very helpful. Okay. Oh, there's so much I want to talk to you about there. But you mentioned integration with Xero.
Yes.
I noticed that you've just launched your integration with Free Agent. Tell me about that.
Yes, definitely. No, we're super excited about this one. We launched last week, essentially with Free Agent. They, funny enough, I've known Jem for a few years, and she just sent me a random message on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, would it be good to catch up?" And then we started chatting, and we were like, Free Agent clients do get a lot. Obviously, they get their account sometimes for free through NatWest, and then Free Agent are doing some amazing things, building out more and more integrations to make it even better for clients that are on there and not have to always kind of shift accounting software as the bigger they get. Essentially, that's where Mimo fitted in. Is they didn't yet have an accounts payable or receivable solution. They have like the Stripe and the GoCardless, but they don't have anything on the payable side. And they were like, cool, well, if there's one tool that we can integrate with that will help our clients that are getting bigger and bigger. So when you think about the retail customers, your construction customers that typically might be on Free Agent, they don't have to get, again, 3 other tools to help them manage their growing business. So that's where we're quite excited. So the first launch is purely on the accounts payable side. You have a full sync with Free Agent. You can select which bills to pay. You can drag and drop your payroll into Mimo as well from Free Agent, and then bulk pay that out. Either you can prep it for the client, or you can just give it to the client for them to use internally, but you'll still get the accounting bookkeeping discount for them.
Nice. Great
Yeah,
work. Amazing.
yeah,
Um,
they're amazing. We love working with those guys.
yeah, me too. I need to catch up with Jem. I haven't spoken to her for a while. I'm sure she'll be.
Yeah,
We'll all go off to Fab next
I
week.
know.
So,
Yeah,
in fact, this comes out. This episode's coming out while we're at Fab. So in the future. Okay. So there were a lot of things I want to unpick around. You were talking about the work that we do with the client might take less time to do it when we're
yes,
using a tool like Mimo, and you were
yeah,
talking about value pricing. And I know that, Joe and I talk about selling a gold standard service, the best of what you can sell. You sell that, you give the client the best level of service, and you charge properly for it, because that's how you're going to run a profitable practice. If you're a new bookkeeper, one of the biggest challenges you face when you have few clients is
yes,
that you underprice the work because you want to win the client. And
yep,
then because you want to deliver a great service, so you get lots of referrals, you over deliver on the work and you start
yeah,
offering things that are outside of scope. And then you fill up your time with these few clients you've got, and then you haven't got capacity for new clients. And if you start to, then you're not offering the same level of service, and then you get stuck in this terrible trap.
yep,
Um,
yep,
and because often when we are pricing our very first clients, or if you're still on hourly rate billing, we are worried about bringing in automations that can do our work faster, because we need to charge for those hours, because that's the only way we're going to get paid more. Is it a question? Is there a
yeah.
question here?
No,
I
I
think,
know it, but I do know where you're going. Yeah,
yeah, like, what we need permission, right? We need to give ourselves permission to be able to use tools like this, because every other practice is using them. If you're not using them, all you're doing is just creating more work for yourself. Is it the norm that people are automating activities like this and still pricing the same way that they were when they were doing it manually?
exactly. That was the good question. Yeah, it's a lot of the conversations that we're having at the moment. So interesting enough, so there's two. I like to think of it. There's two ways of doing this, especially when automation in general, whether this is payments or not. You can either decide to bring in the automation in-house. So that's essentially you own the Zero, the Mimo, the Dext, or whatever that you're using, and you're doing it for the client. So essentially, they're sending all the documents, they're sending you a sheet of the payroll, you're setting up the payment run, and then sending it to the client to approve and pay. Oh, sorry, that's my phone going off. Approve, essentially approving and paying. That's one side, and that typically will take a little bit longer to implement, because again, you're creating a whole new service line, and you're like, I've already got so much on my plate. How can I actually add in another service line and start billing for it? And that's just a little bit too overwhelming for me right now. So I maybe do it with one client.
Mhm.
We then also then have the discussion, which I like to call like is our second lane. The cool thing about especially Amimo or any other platform that is more in the automation space is think about it of what the client is already doing themselves. And this has a kind of a wider impact on how sticky the client is. So you can go to them and be like, hey, Mr. Customer, I see that you're paying around 10 invoices every single week, or you're doing a payroll for 30 employees at the end of the month. I bet you're probably spending a couple of hours on a Friday or at midnight trying to pay your employees, and it's getting to your head. Yes. Well, I found a great tool. What I can do is I can set it up for you. I can get Max on a call, or I can get someone else on a call with you. They'll help you implement it. And then at least you're not spending that time at the end of a week or at midnight processing these payments, but it also has a wider impact of I don't have to keep nagging you for the invoices that you've paid and that random bank line that's appeared. And I'm saying, what's this payment for? Or what's
Mhm.
this part payment for? And et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't mean that you have to reduce your pricing, because a lot of clients are actually happy that you've come to them with a solution. because they're seeing it as, actually, you've just saved me 2 hours. I'm still going to pay you the same amount of money, because it doesn't matter if you're spending a slightly less time. I get less nagging. I get my time back as well as a business owner, and then you kind of put them in their shoes. So I always say to clients that are scoping out these types of automation, think about what lane you want to run with, depending on the type of client. Do you want to do it internally? That will take a little bit more of your time, but you can charge for that implementation and ongoing process fee. Or if you refer it to the client, you can still keep the same amount of price per client, but you're saving time on actually on the reconciliation piece, on chasing for invoices that you don't realize actually you're probably spending a few hours doing that, and finding out which line and mental capacity to bring on more clients. So it does have an impact. Both have an impact on how much you're billing in the long run.
Yeah, I think the focus on like outcomes here for
Mm.
you and the client, this is why we need to price for outcomes. We need to
Yes.
price for like the work we deliver. If the client was employing somebody to run their finance function, that person would be paid their salary regardless of how long that specific activity took.
Yep.
They would fill their time with chatting at the coffee machine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also the stickiness. I think a lot of, we are slightly worried about losing clients. We always are. But if you show them a great service, but also knowledge and advice around it, they go and speak to someone else if they are interested. And they might realize that actually this person isn't as in depth as what I already have in terms of my automation piece, or isn't over my books, or doesn't kind of give me the well-rounded service that I already have. So why would I change?
Yeah.
And they tend to stay with you for a lot longer, because it's like, well, Zoe's looking after everything and I don't have to worry.
Yeah.
That's another
Yeah,
piece.
100%. That's it. We did a survey with our
Yes.
community with Mimo support recently. It's our Time is Money survey, and I'm going to share the link to it in the show notes if you want to find out more
Yeah.
about it. We were looking into trends in our community for getting paid. We wanted to understand what were the biggest challenges in terms of getting paid. And there were some things that came up for me. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about how do we help our clients, but I'm always surprised by how much we as bookkeepers kind of let people off the hook for paying us. One of the questions that we asked in the survey was about which strategies bookkeepers are using to encourage
Yes.
on-time payments, and 15% of respondents actually said they had no strategy. There was nothing that they did to encourage on-time payments. And now that might be like, I'm sure there are invoice terms, guys. Come on, but
Yeah.
if we're struggling with this in practice, 100% our clients need our support with this as well.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole conversation. Is you got to think of it as you're a business owner, your client's a business owner, and they will probably have the same problem as you do going in and out. So they understand if you are also chasing your invoices, or putting invoice terms on, or using strategies to get yourself paid. Because imagine if they're probably going to be just in a bigger problem if you cease trading. And we don't want that to happen, right? It's like, well, I don't have enough cash flow. I can't continue with you as a customer because I don't have a payment. So I am always baffled, but I understand, because as bookkeepers and also accountants, you care a lot for your clients, right? As you said, is like your client is always first, and then I'll deal with my books later. It's fine. Like, the priority sits with the client first. The client's always right. But there are more and more things that you can put in place, like a Mimo and credit control. It takes you 30 minutes to set up, and then you can just leave it running in the background. It's Think about the small pieces that you can do from time to time. Like Joe did it on a weekend on a Sunday. She just turned it on and got paid.
Money.
It
Yeah.
and it's
It's
money
free
back. It's a few
money.
hundred. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
free
It's something that
money.
you've written off in your head. Yeah.
100%.
So it's yeah. I'm always surprised, and I think a lot of those pieces come down to that. Is think about your invoicing terms and conditions and how you're getting paid. An account number and sort code. Think of, if you got an invoice with just numbers on it, would you look at it and be like, oh, I'll do that later? You probably
Yeah.
would. You'd be like, oh, I need to
Oh
log
my
into my
gosh,
bank account.
yes.
Yeah.
100%. I would put it on a pile of stuff
Yeah.
and eventually I would do it.
Yeah.
That when I felt so bad about the pile of stuff, I would do it. And I
Yeah.
think if we think like that's how we would deal with this. I mean, I have like, I don't have to do anything with this stuff. I was just saying on our community call here, I got like a thing from my water company. I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I holding on to this? All I have to do is put it somewhere or recycle it somewhere. But this
Yeah.
is what people really do with the paperwork they get. This
Yeah.
is a real truth here.
Exactly. But and imagine, so if you had a big green button, people love button, like people are curious and they just tend to click on it, right? And we are trigger happy. But if it's branded to your own colors, they feel more secure as well. They don't feel like on edge because it's a new payment system or anything. But they're like, I can process it. And the very cool thing is actually, if you look at the metrics, and this is in general, if you do implement a receivables product, whether it's Mimo, hopefully Mimo, or others, your customers will tend to, if they have a great first experience, they will tend to pay you quicker than they did in the previous months because they understand how easy it is for them to do it. So they're like, oh, the first one they might delay because they might not understand. But once they've clicked on it, done a Face ID, paid, they're like, that was so easy. So the next time they get an invoice, they're like, I can just do it now and I don't have to think
Yeah.
about it because I know it only takes me 20 seconds. And you tend to see essentially your credit terms reduce.
Oh, that is so good.
Mm.
Exactly that. You do. You sit on it because you're like, oh, it's the first. Oh, this is going to be a pain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, and then when you're like, oh no, that was easy. It's you decide after that first interaction. You decide was this easy or not, and it's from there you move on. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so valuable. Oh, right. So,
Yeah.
Mimo,
Yes.
Get Paid is free. Get Paid is free. You don't pay anything to use Get Paid. So anyone watching this can click on the link in the show notes and please go and just try it because someone
Yep.
might pay you today that didn't pay you for a while.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
and your customers as well. And then you get the brownie points from your customers. What about what do people need to know about the other side, money outside of things?
Yeah, exactly. So as you mentioned, Get Paid completely free, all the automations, all the reminders. You just pay 50p per incoming payment. Doesn't matter the amount of invoices if they because they can bulk all the invoices together. But you can essentially pull off all the insights, all the reminders completely for free. If it works, great. If it doesn't, haven't lost anything. On the money outside, so the pay side, we offer free payroll up to 50 employees. So that means essentially if you or your client is running anything over 5 employees, we tend to say using an automation piece will probably save you minimum of the 30 minutes going into your bank account and clicking account number, sort code, pay, account number, sort code, pay. So it's usually a great way into payment automation on the payable side. And then we have our supplier payments, and that is priced on the amount of invoices that you'd be processing, but typically starts free from 5 invoices a month and £20 because we give a discount to the 6FB members for 50 invoices, and then slightly higher if they need more than that. It goes up to about £49 for 125 invoices. So that's on the payable side, and that's when you start thinking about the additional services that you can implement, and you tend to, all of our practices rebuild that out to their clients because it's a time saving for the client. They're not logging into the bank and clicking pay, 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 pay. And it's a time saving for you guys as well when you're doing the reconciliation because everything's mapped when you set them up.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, so lots to think about, but I think the best thing to do if you've watched this or you've listened to this and you thought I need to know more, if you follow the link in the show notes, you can go and find out more about Mimo. And Max, can people connect with you? Like, if they reach
Yes.
out to you if they've got a question?
Exactly. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, but we also will share the show notes, a booking link essentially straight to me, and also my direct line. So feel free to give me a call or drop me an email, and more than happy to answer all the questions.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, it's been really nice to chat to you. Thanks so much for talking about Mimo with me. And thanks everyone for listening this week. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Bookkeepers Podcast. Have a great
Cheers,
day.
guys.
Bye.